Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. My name is Jasleen Kaur, and I'm a translator on the Guru Granth Sahib project. We're excited to announce the release of Bhagat Kabir's Var Sat composition. This composition is revealed in the rag or musical mode of Gauri, which usually is used to invoke a kind of feeling of a pain or pang of separation. And in the Guru Granth Sahib, this emotion of sort of separation is coupled with hope and the understanding that though sort of separation is painful and long and difficult, it can still be overcome when one feels sort of the presence of the one within their consciousness. The phrase Var Sat refers to the structure and form of the composition, which is a folk genre based on the 7 days of the week. So Bhagat Kabir uses this structure of the calendar week to describe what we can practice, what habits we can make, and what deeds we can do, and subverts understandings of the days of the week as either auspicious or inauspicious. So I thought I would start by going over the Raha line before I talk about what's really stuck with me the past couple of months. So in the Raha line, Bhagat Kabir says, Bar bar har ke gun gavo, gurgam ped sohar ka pavo. Raha. Which translates to, if someone sings the virtues of Har, the one light, the fear eliminator, the remover of suffering, this is the name of IkOankar. If someone sings the virtues of Har again and again, having approached the Guru, that being finds the secret of Har. So Bhagat Kabir is saying, if a seeker through a relationship with the wisdom, with the Guru, sings praises of IkOankar continuously, then they come to realize that it's through that continuous singing of praises and the active cultivation of devotion within themselves that they can connect with IkOankar. Bhagat Kabir is very clear from the beginning that singing is the thing that we ought to be doing constantly and repeatedly. So the thing that we do in this way cannot be a particular ritual or gesture or pilgrimage or debate. It can't be philosophical or abstract. It can really only be singing, because this is a thing we can all do at any time. It's accessible. It requires nothing other than for us to use these bodies to vocalize our devotion. And it brings new understanding. And also sort of in the realm of kind of folk culture, because this is a genre that's used in folk culture. In that sense, this singing is collective and it's sort of community oriented. It's how we come to a collective understanding of something, especially sort of complicated ideas that we put simply. And so Bhagat Kabir sort of reminds us from the very beginning that when this singing becomes a practice or a habit or a routine, and the wisdom becomes integral to our everyday, this is how we meet IkOankar. And this is how we find the quote unquote like secret or mystery or insights about IkOankar through the wisdom. So all that being said, I wanted to focus on the imagery in the fourth stanza here. And the reason is because it's imagery that we are used to, that we see a lot in Gurbani and also in like Indic sort of schools of thought, culture, etc., popular culture, so often, which is the image of the lotus. But in stanza 4, delivering the message through Wednesday, Bhagat Kabir says, a seeker should do illumination of the intellect, which is, I always thought, was such a beautiful image, because it means that that intellect just needs to be lit up from within. It's not something that has to kind of start from scratch. That potential is always there. So a seeker ought to illuminate that intellect within themselves and realize the dwelling of Hud, of the one within the lotus heart. Through the wisdom, they ought to overcome duality and recognize that the self and the supreme self, or the being and the supreme being, IkOankar, are one and the same. And in this way, they ought to set the inverted lotus heart upright. They ought to focus their disoriented mind on IkOankar. So Bhagat Kabir says that a seeker ought to illuminate that intellect within themselves, within their own heart, and that if we develop this higher intellect and understanding through relationship with the wisdom, our ignorance is converted into enlightenment. And that's how we sort of begin to know how to live and what to dedicate our time and effort into. And it's through that illuminated intellect and relationship with the wisdom that we realize that the one light, IkOankar, dwells within our lotus hearts, within us. And we realize the presence of the one within us, and that there's no difference between the seeker and IkOankar. And not only that there's no difference between the seeker and IkOankar, but that many things are one and the same. Happiness and sorrow, good and bad, all sort of binaries or dualities or polarities that we've created for ourselves, they all get destroyed. And Bhagat Kabir says this is how we ought to set our inverted lotus hearts upright, by focusing these disoriented and wandering minds on IkOankar. So, as I said, the lotus is an important and commonly used symbol. It's especially used by yogis in philosophical and abstract ways to discuss things like purity, spiritual enlightenment, and rebirth. But Bhagat Kabir reframes this and says that the lotus in mud, even though it's in mud, is still growing. That it's natural, actually, for the lotus to be in the mud, and that it's also natural for the bud of the lotus, before it begins to bloom, to be upside down or inverted. And when it blossoms, that bud turns itself upright. So we talked a lot in our commentary conversation about like, what does it mean for these lotus hearts or lotus minds to be inverted and then turned upright? And the understanding we kind of came to is that like we overcome hardship and obstacles, and our natural state of existence changes when we are more illuminated, when we have new understanding and new perspectives. And when our minds bloom in this way, they might look at first glance like they aren't blooming, or they might look like they're turned the wrong way. But that's because they're struggling through something so that they can be illuminated. And when the struggling mind connects with the wisdom, its orientation changes and it blossoms so beautifully. And that sort of blossom no longer touches the dirt, but it's still in the water. Our feet are on earth and in the mud. We are in this life, and we can continue to be in this life without being touched by these earthly poisons. As we're blossoming, as we're connected, we can be alive in this way if we illuminate the higher intellect within ourselves. So I encourage you to spend time with this composition. It's so beautiful. Bhagat Kabir spends it alluding to various lifestyles and schools of thought and philosophies and complexes and systems that all claim to be developing some kind of devotion within us, and that all claim to reveal to the people involved in them some kind of insight or mystery of the one. And he subverts and reframes all these popular ideas. He simplifies them for his audience, for the common person. He challenges ideas about asceticism and strict and untenable disciplines and complicated systems and fear-based understandings of karma, and the idea that the body that we have is somehow full of filth, right? Like all these things that these different systems teach us. And instead, he encourages us to reflect on like how we could work with these lives in this world, with these bodies, how we can have a relationship with the vices within ourselves such that we can become steady against them. How do we, like the lotus, exist in the water and in the mud and in the filth and still bloom? And he tells us it's through a relationship with the wisdom and through that thing from the Rahal line, right? Like this constant singing of the virtues of the one, through devotion and praise and identification. This is what it means to be like truly filth-free. Filth comes, it's a natural process of being humans in the world, but cleansing ourselves continuously from within through devotion is also part of this process of what it means to be human in the world. It's daily work, and we are sort of required to do it again and again, week after week. And if we really want to demystify the mystery of the one for ourselves and experience that one's presence, it can only happen through the wisdom and through this devoted commitment. So I encourage you to spend time with the translations and transcreations, the word meanings and commentaries, and reflect on whether your day-to-day, your calendar week will become about praise, whether you will sing constantly, and whether you will cultivate more and more devotion within yourself each week. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.